Hi guys, welcome to section C for chapter 2. We're going to keep talking about the cell and things that go on in the cell. First, let's talk about some plant cells and this process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is basically a reaction that uses sunlight for the plants to create food. Plants are what's known as autotrophs, meaning they can create their own energy or their own food, and they use that sun energy to do that. The raw materials, let me get my pen here. The raw materials of photosynthesis are carbon dioxide and water. This is why we have to water plants. And the products, after the sunlight kind of comes in right here, alters everything. We get glucose and oxygen. This is why plants are useful to humans, because they actually release the oxygen that we breathe. We exhale the carbon dioxide that they want. They exhale the oxygen that we want. Now, this takes place in an organelle known as the chloroplast, only found in plant cells. This is where this chemical reaction is happening. Inside the chloroplast is a pigment known as chlorophyll. That's what gives plants their green color. And that pigment absorbs that sun's energy and allows this chemical reaction to take place. That's why, when trees lose their leaves during the winter or something, they just aren't growing as much. They're kind of in a state of hibernation. They're not performing photosynthesis. If a tree or a plant isn't getting water, it can't produce photosynthesis. That chlorophyll dies, it goes away. That's why a plant turns brown, because that color goes away, okay? In animal cells, we have kind of the opposite reaction going on. We have what's known as cellular respiration. Now, remember, we started with carbon dioxide and water with photosynthesis. Look at what you end up with cellular respiration. You end up with carbon dioxide and water. On photosynthesis, the products are glucose and oxygen. Look at what we start with cellular respiration. So they're just kind of opposites here. And here's that ATP again. That's just energy. We'll talk about that a little bit more, okay? So cellular respiration, excuse me, is a process in eukaryotic cells that uses oxygen to kind of break the energy out of that glucose molecule. It kind of digests the glucose molecule to release ATP as energy. Now, what's interesting is one molecule of glucose will produce about 32 molecules of ATP. This is a very efficient process. You get a lot of energy from this. There's two steps to this process. The first step is known as the anaerobic process, meaning it does not require oxygen. It takes place over here before it gets into the mitochondria. It's also known as glycolysis. It's just the first step where the glucose gets broken down into smaller pieces, okay? Then, excuse me, we have the aerobic respiration. That's the rest of this going on right here. That does require oxygen. Both things have to happen together. That's why we say cellular respiration requires oxygen. It doesn't matter that the glycolysis doesn't need it. That part inside the mitochondria requires oxygen. This aerobic part, is also known as the Krebs cycle. Both glycolysis and the Krebs cycle are pretty complicated chemical reactions. You'll probably learn more about those in high school. Certainly, if you take biology in college, you'll learn more about those. Just kind of keep the names in mind for now, okay? And then again, there's that ATP. The ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. You don't need to know that. And you get about 32 of those from one molecule of glucose. Okay, so I already kind of showed you how the reactions are opposites of each other. This diagram kind of shows that as well. You've got the chloroplast of a plant cell right here doing photosynthesis. It releases oxygen and glucose, which animal cells need. We take in that oxygen and glucose, perform cellular respiration, and then our waste product we release is water and carbon dioxide. Well, the plant cells need that. That's their raw materials. So they take that in, perform photosynthesis, dump out their waste process, we take that in, and so on and so on and so on, okay? So plants produce what animals need, animals produce what plants need. And the sun feeds it all. Coincidence? This is another piece that just points to a creator. I think it's awfully convenient that these things would work in such balance with each other. If you have faith that God created plants and animals, it stands to reason that He would make them to work in coordination so well like this. Okay. Okay, some cells have to produce energy without oxygen. That's a process known as fermentation. It's similar to cellular respiration, but they can do the whole thing without oxygen. And there's two types here. There's alcoholic fermentation, which we see over here. I know this chart's a little complicated. And then there's lactic acid fermentation, okay? Really what I wanted you to see in this chart was the products of those things. Alcoholic fermentation, gives us alcohol, beer, wine, things like that. But it's also commonly used in the production of bread. That's why bread is light and airy. Lactic acid fermentation gives us things like cheese and yogurt and soy sauce. Okay, certain bacteria actually do that kind of fermentation to produce those kinds of food. Okay, alcoholic fermentation produces carbon dioxide and alcohol, again, making bread and alcoholic drinks. And in that lactic acid fermentation, it can happen in those bacteria that we talked about, but it also can happen in your muscle cells. It produces lactic acid, which builds up in your muscle cells, and that's what causes your muscles to be sore after working out really hard, okay? Because your muscles are using the ATP that are provided. There's mitochondria in your cells. It prefers cellular respiration because it's more efficient. It produces more ATP, but eventually your muscle cells run out of oxygen. You're working faster than your body can deliver the oxygen. So this lactic acid fermentation takes over. It keeps producing energy without oxygen. Not as well. It doesn't produce as many ATP molecules. And that byproduct of lactic acid causes us to be sore after working out. Okay? Fun fact. And that is all I have for you today. Talk to you guys later.